Interesting stories on the front pages of the Daily Trust newspaper. Welcome back, gentlemen, ladies. It's the newspaper review segment of the Daybreak show. And starting with the Daily Trust, of course, starting with this story atop the page. Landslide kills 30 in FCT, 19 kidnapped. Beside that, we see missing foyer nursing students' corpse found buried on campus. That story could be found on page 6. Quite an unfortunate situation there. Leadership deficit held Nigeria back, says Tinubu. Story on page 5. For the lead story, Atiku Obi rejects judgment, head to Supreme Court. Legal battle to reclaim mandate just begins, according to the ex-vice president. Reasoning conclusion unacceptable, according to the ex-Anambra governor and also the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. You will face another round of defeat, according to the APC. Akpabio, Kogi governor, asked Duo to accept verdict. Also, beside the pictorial, we could see on the pictorial, of course, is the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, as well as the presidential candidate of the Labour Party and ex-governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, during their separate press conferences announcing their plans to proceed to the Supreme Court to review the Presidential Election Petitions Court judgment, which was delivered a couple of days ago. And beside that, organ harvest. Police arrest doctor over woman's missing kidney in Jos. Interesting story there, could be found on page 16. Sheikh Argungu buried, Tinubu, governor's speaker mourn. Page 26, that story. South Africa reviews proposed hijab ban for nurses after outcry from Muslims. That's some of the stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper.
Let's move to the Daily Independent this morning. From the top of the page there, it says troops kill 814 terrorists, arrest 1,326 criminals and 42 kidnappers. Beside that, you'd see 120 billion naira debt. NCC, CBN settle disagreement between telcos and the banks. The major story says Atiku Obi rejects tribunal's ruling, head to Supreme Court. The PEPC failed to restore confidence, according to Atiku. Peter Obi says no relenting on his quest for justice, and tribunal judgment a miscarriage of justice. That's according to Hurua. You'll find all these stories on page 29 of the newspaper there. Below that, you'd see I am not going into retirement. Atiku replies Shetima. You find this on page 6. APC asks Nigerians to join hands with Tinubu to confront governance challenges. You find this on page 7. Expect strong winds, strong winds, heavy rainfall for 3 days. Nimet once. Akeredolu returns from medical leave after 3 months, which is a good news there. Insecurity, we need prayer to succeed, says Defense Minister. Kidnappers, bandits on the run in Southeast. That's according to Reps. You find all the stories on page 7 of the newspaper. Leadership deficit pushed me to contest for president. That's according to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And below the belt there, it says Nigeria Customs takes action against defaulting dealer banks. You find this on page 6. Now, these are some of the stories on the front page of the Daily Independent.
We lost the battle, but not the war, according to former President Atiku Abubakar speaking on the Presidential Tribunal ruling. This is the lead story on the Blueprint newspaper. Ex-Vice President Obi head to Supreme Court say judgment bereft of justice. We're still in shock, says the PDP. Buhari hails PEPT for refusing to be intimidated. APC urges losers to team up with Tinubu for national development. That story is on page 5. Also, banks to clear 120 billion naira USSD debt to telecoms companies. Also, Naira weakens at 930 naira to a dollar at black market as dollar scarcity persists. Nigeria may take 300 years to close infrastructure gap, according to the World Bank. Catch that story on page 22. And finally, troops kill 814 terrorists, arrest 1,326 criminals in 3 months, rescue 721 kidnapped victims, recover over 6 million liters of crude. That story could be found on page 6. And that's it for the Blueprint newspaper.
Let's move to the Nation newspaper this morning. Below the headlines there, it says oil theft firms the MDAs host communities involved, say security chiefs. Below that, you'd see Wike, Atiku, Tambuwal killing PDP should be suspended. The major story says Atiku will be while we are challenging the tribunal verdict. Other writers there says, don't go to Supreme Court. Bello, Wike, Bruce urge the PDP and LP candidate. APC judgment reinforces democracy and judiciary vibrancy. Now, all the stories, of course, you find on page 4 of the newspaper there. Below, you'd see Tinubu promises better future with good governance. And there's a pictorial of the president meeting with some organizations there in Abuja. At the bottom of the page, it says, Minister gives NIS 2 weeks to clear outstanding passport. You find the story also on page 4. At the bottom of the page there, you'd see Nigeria, Australia to partner on training of local miners. You find this on page 5. Customs stops defaulting banks from revenue collection. You find this on page 7. Ekeredolu recuperating in Ibadan on return from vacation, and Lagos Assembly drops 2 Sanwo-Olu's new nominees. You find all the stories and more in the Nations this morning.
And for the Guardian newspaper, for the lead story, poor lessons from 2020. Endless wait for palliatives in states amid accountability deficits. Atiku Obi rejects PEPC ruling head for Supreme Court. Nigeria needs prayers to end insecurity, says Defense Minister. And atop the page, 30 killed in Abuja landslide, 19 kidnapped, Wike orders surveillance. Lagos Assembly rejects 2 commissioner nominees, confirms 15 others. Let the hammer fall on same-sex unions. And finally, troops kill 814 terrorists, arrest 1,903 in 3 months. That story could be found on page 30. And that's it for The Guardian this morning.
And then we'll move to the Daily Times. The major story says, we will not congratulate Tinubu to Supreme Court. We go. That's according to Atiku and Obi, who declared that one. Says, I will not validate electoral banditry. Both candidates knock INEC. Anarchy looms if. That's according to Obi's counsel. You'll find all these stories, of course, in the Daily Times newspaper. Below there, you'd see again, Lagos Assembly rejects 2 commissioner, according to the nominees. Military neutralizes 814 terrorists and hinders thefts of 4 billion naira crude. You find this on page 2. Sokoto will lead Nigeria in digital economic innovation agenda. You find this story on page 8. Nigeria loses 30% crude oil to theft daily, according to the speaker. 16 trillion naira lost from 2000 to 2020. At the bottom of the page there, it says residents ask the local government boss to account for 2 years allocations. Now, this you find on page 4. These are some of the stories on the Daily Times newspaper this morning.
And now we're joined by our newspaper reviewer for today, talking about Nuruddin Abdullah, the editor at 21st Century Chronicle. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
So, let's start with, of course, the Daily Trust. Lead story, Atiku Obi rejects judgment, head to Supreme Court. First of all, what's your take on the judgment and this move?
2 things. If you lose an election and you go to tribunal, it's like a gambling. You don't stop there. You have to exhaust the processes. So what the PDP presidential candidate Atiku said, as well as the Labour candidate Obi said, is not surprising to all political analysts, particularly if you see how the 13-hour judgment, came. But more importantly, it is expected when you go into any context, there must be a winner. There must be a declaration at the end of the context. And there are processes. Okay, you can, if you are not comfortable with the outcome by the electoral umpire, you exhaust these processes. For the presidential election, the Presidential Election Tribunal is there, which it delivers its judgment there. If you are not comfortable, like, is it Obi or Atiku that described the verdict as, is it electoral banditry or something like that, then the Supreme Court is there. Another thing is you can't determine what the learned judges say. The lawyers from the two sides argue. You remember that 25%?
Of course.
It became almost every Nigerian became an expert in law. I was telling them, I remember, I said, okay, you postulate, you advance your arguments, but the learned judges decide. And what they say is final, particularly if it is upheld by the apex court and whatever. So you look at it, it's almost a unanimous decision. And from history, presidential elections, I don't know. Maybe there will be a first, but the moment a declaration is made of turning presidential election, it's very difficult, particularly in this part of the country, because maybe the learned judges, particularly the Supreme Court, they don't consider just the law. You remember during Yaradua during his inaugural speech, accepted and admitted, the election was flawed. And he promised to amend it, you understand. When Buhari went to court, you remember there was a division at the Presidential Tribunal, unlike what happened the before yesterday. And he moved to Supreme Court. Yeah, one of the judgments said that the election was flawed and there should be another re-election. But the others said yes, they agreed that the election was flawed. But the country could not afford another round of elections. That was the two judgments, you understand, that took the Buhari up to Supreme Court. But I think, on the other hand, it shows our maturity. Remember, in the past, some presidential candidates were invoking fire and brimstone, mass action, this and that. But at least now they are mature enough. You contested an election, verdict has been delivered by INEC, and you lose. There are stages. One of it was the one we saw before yesterday, the Presidential Tribunal. And if you are not comfortable, you move on. The Supreme Court is final. And another thing, if you can't decide what the judges give as verdicts, you can only advance your arguments the way you deem it fit. But they have to look beyond what you say, beyond what your opponents say, what the law says. And
what you can prove.
Exactly. So the decision they take is binding, particularly the Supreme Court. You remember there are cases that Nigerians believe why there's a governor from the southeast. He came fourth in the election, but at the Supreme Court he became first, and he is now a governor.
Of course.
We have the Senate President, the current Senate President. You remember the katakata that trail is our reading of the Electoral Act was different from the position taken by the Supreme Court. The former Senate President, Ahmad Lawan, he didn't even participate in the primaries, but today he's a senator of the Federal Republic. And as far as that judgment is concerned, it's final. So these are some of the issues. But more importantly, again, if the expectations, politicians will always complain. If the thing go their way, they will celebrate it. If it goes the other way, whether the facts, and the learned lawyers, they will never advise you correctly. With due respect to them.
So Nigeria say it is their time to eat their own
you see. So these are the issues. And it is expected that since they have gone to the tribunal, look at Jonathan in 2015. A gentleman. He lost the election. He conceded defeat, which was unprecedented as of that time. And he didn't even go to tribunal.
For the first time in a very long time.
For the first time. So we hope others will equally, because if you lose, you lose. There are distances. But I don't know, the lawyers sometimes, You know, maybe, yeah, from the view of it you have lost, but you can explore some technicalities and what have you.
Okay, so the president is currently in India for the G20 summit, and at on the sidelines during one of his meetings, I believe with Nigerians, he mentioned that leadership deficit held Nigeria back. So let me read the lead. He said President Tinubu on Thursday in India said he ran for the highest office in Nigeria because of the fact that despite the great human and natural resource wealth of the nation, the leadership and public sector management deficit in the country held Nigeria back from manifest destiny. Isn't this an indictment on all of the past presidents and also administration that we've had?
You are saying the past. Some of the key players of the past are
in
still
the current.
The key players in the present. Because maybe you are looking at it from the national point of view. And governance is beyond that. What President Tinubu said is the truth. Nigeria, giant of Africa, the biggest economy, you see in our urban cities, women, the aged and children are struggling, are battling to get a 10 kg bag of rice, grain, and what have you. This is not Sudan. You understand? This is Nigeria. So what does it tell you? Yeah, actually, the leaders have failed over the time. Maybe not all of them. So, look at all the indices.
So isn't this a self-indictment on the president? Because, I mean, at the top of my head, I can mention like 8 persons in the current administration who are serving as ministers of the federal government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who served as former governors in the previous administration. I can mention an additional 10 persons at the moment who served in various capacities, be it, you know, as federal legislators or as former ministers and the likes of that. So if you would say Nigeria suffers a leadership deficit, aren't the people who you are indicting currently in your administration, doesn't that speak poorly of you?
Not necessarily. That's what I think. Maybe they are necessary evils.
In what sense?
Thank you. The Constitution said you should pick at least one minister from the 36th state of the Federation. When Mr. Segiri is contesting, there are people that back you. Fiscally, logistically,
and
financially. You understand? Or even those that did, what is it physically? They were on the operational, maybe doing some form of rigging or intimidating your opponents, you understand? And by virtue of that, they believe that you are owing them something, and they need to be part of the government. And you say former governors, look at the former governors. Most of them, they want that, you know, they have enjoyed immunity for 8 years. So it's risky for them to live without anything. That's why they retire at the Senate. If they can't retire at the Senate, they go as cabinet members. That's actually what happened. And not all the governors, to use this word, are irresponsible. There are those who still celebrate. Like the president, during his tenure in Lagos, 1999-2007, he was one of the most celebrated governors. We saw what he did in Lagos. Yeah, there are those that wasted 8 years, and they are still in this cabinet. You understand that? So there are certain things, you know, when you focus on governance, you have to look at equally the political aspect of it. And particularly, you know, it's a two-term thing. There are certain, I said necessary evils because, yes, maybe they will add no value, you know. We know there are certain governors that we know, there are certain ministers that were appointed that will add zero value to governance ecosystem. The president knows. But, you know, he has to certify certain idiosyncrasies. Look at even their CVs. Some have zero CV. Some are even grade 2 teachers. But they are giving sensitive.
That was a low blow.
I'm not mentioning names.
Okay.
But the man delivered his state to the president.
Okay.
So these are some of the, and you know, the president, yeah, he is focused about governance, but don't forget he's a politician. And if Allah spares our life, he may recontest. You understand? So these are certain things, you know, that the...
Of course. Okay, so while the Minister of Defense says Nigerians need prayers, Nigerians should pray for Nigeria against, you know, its insecurity challenges. Well, troops say they killed around 814 terrorists and they arrested 1,326 criminals in the last 3 months, and of course rescued 721 kidnapped victims, recovering over 6 million liters of crude. This story is replicated across, you know, different newspapers. So, what's your assessment of Nigeria's security situation so far? Do you feel, you know, there's been sort of an improvement from what it used to be? Because I know there was a time when, of course you remember, when there was not a single day that we didn't have issues around insecurity on the front pages of national dailies.
Yes, there is improvement, even though, you know, there was a sort of lacuna during the transition process. You can cite example to what happened in Niger. About more than 30 of our soldiers were murdered, and an Air Force chopper or what have you almost was done. There was an improvement, but if you look at, put it vis-a-vis the, maybe now we have a prayer warrior as a Minister of Defense.
So prayer is now the solution to our security?
I don't think so.
Okay. So
I don't think so.
He's saying that is what, you know, is expected of Nigerians also. I mean, everybody should contribute their own quota, so Nigerians should pray.
So our quota should be prayer. Okay.
So.
Well, I don't think that is enough. And I don't know, maybe the audience of the Honorable Minister, maybe he was here addressing a delegation of clerics, maybe he was in the mosques, or was in a church, I don't know. Maybe we have to contextualize that. But if he were not addressing the clergy, I think that was unnecessary. What we want from him as minister is a leadership. Ensure that our troops are well kitted, well remunerated, well armed, and well trained. That's what they need. Boost their morale. They can surmount all the challenges. They have done it in the past. He should lead from the front. But we don't expect a minister who will reduce himself to a mosque or to a church. And maybe he will carry his beat and just be praying. No, that's not enough. Prayer answers solve problems, but you know, there are certain problems, you know, you have to move, you have to act. Even from the jurisprudence, you have to act, then you pray. Bandits are advancing towards one village. Then all the security, all the troops that are supposed to be sent to that place to repel them will retire to a mosque or a church
pray for them.
And pray? No. So it is not the prayer leadership that Nigerian troops, Nigerian armed forces need from this Honorable Minister. He should know that. We didn't put him there to seek for prayers. We put him there to seek to lead from the front. You understand? And I think there is one recurring problem with our security agencies. That is my understanding of the situation. You know, they will push, and they will relax. And this bad element will start resurging. You saw this. Until recently, when those soldiers were killed, you know, there was silence along the Niger axis, Borno axis, particularly the current Chief of Army Staff. When he was GOC in Kaduna, he did fantastically well. We saw him moving to Borno. He opened roads that were hitherto closed for months. You understand? Even in Zamfara, Katsina, Sokoto, and some parts of the Kebbi, they were silent. But you know, during the election, they came back. maybe the security agencies were more preoccupied with maintaining law and order because of the election. So maybe they took that opportunity to launch more attacks. But I hope now, particularly most of the service chiefs we have now, they have, take the army chief for instance. His antecedent is well known. And it's a positive one. He's not a layback general. He's a general in the real sense of it. You understand? So we hope that maybe they have to push, and eliminate. Don't just push them, don't repel. You have to eliminate. I mean, look at what the DHQ is saying. Almost over 800 were on. Yeah, it's a very successful. I don't know at what time frame.
They said 3 months.
3 months. 90 days, yeah. It's a very good development. So that is what they should be doing. And that was what the minister should encourage them by giving them proper remuneration, the adequate training, kits, armaments, and what have you. Then maybe the last should be the prayers.
No, it should be the touch, the meat on top of the food. All right, so if there is one thing, everybody agrees on, is the fact that we need more productivity, yeah? So we saw the Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy, on Ohaneye, talking in the Anambra Investment Summit, where she mentioned that the government should reduce the days of schools, and make Fridays, for example, a day for the pupils to learn how to do toothpicks, because she made an example, cutting boards and all that. Yes. And at the end of it, even though people at the beginning were applauding that comment, then she said, then when they finish, they can go and market it and sell it. What's your take on that? Because people are already saying you're giving the children, a lot of work when adults don't even have jobs at hand. So what's your take on that, Madam Nuruddin?
I think there is a conflict, just like you mentioned. So she's advocating for child traders.
Child labor.
Yeah. At certain stage in life, there are certain age maybe that children should be in school. But she's talking about primary schools.
She made an example of China.
Okay, so she's saying that Chinese under 10 manufacture and market their products. Is she what she's saying? Maybe it's a subject of fact check.
Probably.
Though China, when it comes to child labor and all manner of these sweet shops, is not a good example. You understand? If you look at the ILO conventions and what have you. But what she's saying is this: okay, reducing the 4 days and reducing the school days to 4. Yeah. Then why can't the Honorable Minister just say, give more priority to entrepreneurship? But there will be confusion. I know people who are in secondary school, you understand, even primary school. There are days that they go off the school and they go, there is this market, weekly market, they go and earn some money and what have you. But that affected their school very, very well. At that time, they were making money more than those who don't, because we rely heavily on our parents and what have you. But that does not give them the opportunity to advance after secondary school. Do you understand? So she should know that, yeah, there is nothing bad in pupils in primary school to learn certain skills. But that should be inculcated in the curriculum, maybe give more priority to entrepreneurship. But sending in officially condoning child labor, I don't think it's something that the Honorable Minister should desist from. Already we have them on the street. So children are supposed to be in school hawking pure water. I don't think any parent will be proud of that. Any country will be proud of that. It means that there is a problem. He's supposed to be in school.
So talking about labor, a couple of days ago, the organized labor embarked on a 2-day warning strike to press home their demands for the government to act, with regards to the current situation of the country. While this is not replicated in any of the national dailies, it's still something I want to get your take on. So, do you subscribe to the idea of the organized labor going on these strike actions, especially when, for example, in the FCT, we saw situations where a couple of hours after the strike commenced, the power was cut out, and for 48 hours, there was no power in the FCT. So when in a situation where Nigerians continue to bear the brunt on the government side and on the labor side, is going or embarking on a strike action necessary at this point to drive home demands, knowing that Nigerians, the people who you are fighting for, bear the brunt of the effect, and the people who you are fighting don't even feel the impact?
For the second leg of your, they do. You understand? And you can't eat your cake and have it again. For every struggle to succeed, there must be sacrifices. I think that is the mistake Nigerians did during Buhari. Labour in particular was crippled by the same Nigerians who were fanatical about Buhari's support. Buhari jacobed the PMS price, you remember? I remember here in Abuja, Labour, the NLC under Waba, you know, came out. They were attacked by supposed supporters of Buhari. They believe that he's a messiah. He has come to turn Nigeria into an El Dorado, and some bad elements that have denied him that right for a very long time don't want it to happen. And that is the problem. Since that time, Labour lost its biting power. Take ASU, for instance. People are condemning ASU for going off. Strike is the last option. Okay, look at what is happening now. There was this blackmail that ASU are only looking for salaries and whatever. There is nothing wrong with that. But that's not enough. Go to the public universities and see. More than 1,000 in a classroom that is not well ventilated, no public address system. How much is the school fees now? That's what ASU was saying at that time. Even though I don't, I even disagree with some of their own. You can't ask for this, and they run it into trillions, and you say that tuition should not be introduced. But look at now, when people are paying 20, 25, 30,000, now they're paying over 200. Before Buhari left, even he jacked up even the school fees of the unity schools. Now it's over 100. Now who is feeling the brunt? If, for instance, the Nigerians have rallied behind ASU, even though the ASU's methodology was equally archaic, you know, they don't consider latest. They don't give explanation to anybody. They believe that, yes, they are fighting for you, and you should know. You know, that kind but now, what is happening? So the same thing with Labour. Yeah, Labour has, but unfortunately, the Labour itself, you know, now is confused. What actually is their demand? Are they looking, if I were them, I would seek for reversal. But now they say that the federal government should devise ways of cushioning the effect. And they are palliative. And look at how the states are even sharing minus some few states, like Borno and what have you. I saw a state, was it Niger, where they are even allocating 80 some millions to traditional rulers, to political appointees. That's how they are sharing the palliatives. Maybe it's a big story. How are they sharing it?
Well, maybe another time we'd have that conversation, you know, properly, but unfortunately we've run out of time and we've come to the end of the program. Nuruddin Abdullah, editor 21st Century Chronicle, thank you so much for coming to the program, and we do hope that when you receive the palliative you would let us know, of course.
We know that he's one of the